Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
The truth shall set you free.
You can't handle the truth.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
That's not how the Force works. Oh, really? You're cold?
I'm gonna make him an offer again.
I'd buy that for $1.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Hasta la vista, baby.
I don't have friends. I got family.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for the Creative Control Movie Podcast. This is episode 29. On today's episode, we're going to be ranking the Spider-Man movies. So we've waited a little bit of time to do this to make sure everyone got to see, No Way Home. Probably everyone's seen it a couple of times at least, I think. And we wanted a time to marinate. People might have gone back and revisited some of the other movies again. And so we want to try and give a definitive list. So everyone's going to have a difference of opinion. So everyone's going to have an opportunity to give their top ranking from 1 to 9. Obviously includes the Tobey Maguire trilogy. It includes the 2 films from Andrew Garfield, the 3 movies from Tom Holland, and the animated movie Into the Spider-Verse. We're all going to give our rankings, what we think, and then we're going to allocate a point system. So everyone's number 1 movie will get 9 points and so forth. And then at the end, we're going to tally the points up and come up with a Creative Control top ranking of this. So joining me on today's show, we have Lee, Alex, Sacha, and Sal. How you doing, gentlemen?
Very well, thank you. All good.
All good. We chatted a lot about Spider-Man on the last podcast as well, when we were talking about our December reviews. Obviously, No Way Home was like the big thing for December, and we could talk about Spider-Man all day. So we got an opportunity to talk a little bit more about Spider-Man and all the different incarnations. And we're all pretty much at that same age where we've all been introduced to it in the same way. So we're pretty much, it's not like somebody who was born like 20 years ago who may have seen Amazing first, or might have seen Tom Holland as their first Spider-Man, who've gone back and discovered others. We've kind of gone through the years, gone through the hardship of comic book movies at the start and where they are now. So what I kind of thought we'd start is let's talk about maybe your favorite out of each incarnation. So let's start off with the original Tobey Maguire trilogy, directed by Sam Rammy. I remember I was working in the cinema at the time with Sacha when the movie first came out. The teaser poster came out with the Twin Towers and the trailer. I have that poster because I took it from the cinema. It's hanging up on my wall in the outside, and that's a prized possession of mine. And seeing Spider-Man brought to life for the first time, that was just incredible. Sacha, how did you feel seeing Spider-Man on this big screen for the first time?
For a crime I did not commit, because I remember coming into work that day with a Spider, and there was a little note saying Sacha has got it. I'd stolen that poster. Why would I put a note saying that I'd done it? And where the fuck's my poster, man? So yeah, there was a whole thing where the Spider-Man.
I had to throw people off the scent, man. I had to throw people off the scent.
I knew where that damn poster was, motherfucker.
When it came in, I had to roll it up and I put it in the ceiling tiles of the office because I was like, I can't hide it anywhere. So literally above my desk in the office, popped out the ceiling tiles and hid that poster in there until I was working a late night shift where I could leave without it. So sorry, it's how it happened. But but yeah, go on. Spider-Man on the big screen. How'd you feel?
Oh, it was amazing. I saw it with you, man. I have a better Spider-Man story though. Spider-Man 2. Me and Kenan saw it at the world premiere at the Odeon in Leicester Square. And what it was I had a day off and I must have been playing video late night till 5 a.m. and shit around 10. About 10 o'clock in the morning, I get this phone call from Ken. And he rings me up and I'm half asleep. He's like, Sash, I got 2 tickets for the premiere of Spider-Man 2 through a hookup. Your mission is you need to be at the cinema by 12 o'clock. By 12 o'clock, midday.
I think this was even before then. This was like an exclusive press screening even before the premiere. So that's why it was in the afternoon.
I still got the ticket. I still got the ticket. And
nice.
I still got the... Wait.
He's gonna get it. He's gonna get it.
Not only has he got it, he knows exactly where it is.
And that's it. It's like, someone's like, yeah, I've got it somewhere. It's like in a box somewhere. He's like, no, I know exactly where this is.
He's got it framed, mate. That is framed.
I still got the booklet they give you.
Oh yes, yeah. They had a whole like booklet pack and everything. Oh, that's amazing. I think I've still got that somewhere up in the loft.
Yeah, I still got the ticket for Spider-Man 2.
Nice.
Yeah. Still got Leicester Square official FDA multimedia screening. So we saw it before. We saw it before the premiere, so before it was even out. And yeah, man, it was sick, man. He was like, "You got clock midday. You got 2 hours. Chop, chop, go and get those tickets. Otherwise," I was like, "What?" I didn't even shower or shave. I clothes on, at the door.
Got to Leicester and I remember that's like one of the that's one of the first screenings where like the audience, even though it was a press screening, that there was like whoops and cheers in it in certain scenes, and
that's what that movie too. Whoa, terrible.
Yeah, sorry about that. I hooked Sacha up with a few things. Basically, I used to be a cinema manager. I worked in the cinema for like 10 years, but I used to be a manager at the Leicester Square cinema. I won't drop names here just in case, but they'll come after me for that poster. So I used to be an events manager as well. So I used to do a lot of the premieres. So we would have some at our cinema, but also we would get hookups from the distribution companies and stuff for the other ones on the square and stuff like that. That was a great time. That's a great time to be on. I met so many people and celebrities. It's amazing. But anyway, I divulge. I might do a podcast on that actually, of just about everyone who I've met and all the premieres I did. But Lee, Lee, what was your first experience of Spider-Man?
First Spider-Man was just I must have seen it maybe 3 or 4 times. It was just incredible because we watched the cartoons like religiously, and then to have like a live action Spider-Man was just awesome. And to be fair, it was a great movie. I really enjoyed that film. So yeah, it just ticked all the boxes really. So that's really good.
Alex, yours must have been Rammy's as well at the cinema, right? You must have been there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, obviously, some of you know, obviously, I've not so much anymore, but big into the comics when I was younger, through with my dad collecting and stuff. So yeah, I had Spider-Man comics and stuff, or reading them growing up, and then obviously the 90s cartoon, and so just to sort of, it was one of those things where up until that point, it didn't even seem possible to have like Spidey's abilities like portrayed properly, like on the big screen, and just to see it actually come off, and it's like, he's swinging around, it looks legit. It was just awesome.
That's it. I mean, Alex and I, we used to go to comic shop together all the time and stuff like that. But we used to go to some of the very early sort of like, I wouldn't even say they were comic cons. They were just like comic book conventions kind of thing. And there'd be loads of retailers there selling the Spider-Man animated figures. And so Alex and I would save up our money. We used to go cut grass together on the weekend. We used to save up that money, go spend it on these figures. And I remember I was not a collector. I was just like a huge fan. So I used to just buy it, open it, and then put it up on my shelf. Alex would tend to buy 2 of like a lot of he'd be like 2, 1 for display, 1 to keep in the package. And it was just like, and I think back now and think, if only, if only I just kept it within those boxes. But I was just like, nah.
Most of mine are open, but I've still got them all up in the loft. I used to have, back in my old place, I used to have like a whole shelf of just the animated Spider-Man figures, but I've still got them up in the loft.
And I've still got all my animated Spider-Man figures. I've kept them all. So I've even managed to keep all the little guns and all sorts of Kingpin's cane. I've got all those little bits. But Sal, so what was your first experience of Spider-Man? Did you see the original on the screen in the cinema at the time?
I did. No, I did. I watched it pretty late because it came out in May, I think, and I had to check because I remember something that I was pretty last to watch it. And the reason why is because I was at university, and May was the time when you had exams and you had looking out for all the papers due and everything. So I didn't really watch it then. And I think I was taking summer classes that year, and I ended up going with a bunch of kids that I'd never met before, and we went to the mall. And we watched it somewhere in Long Island, New York, a place I've never been before. It was kind of fun. And watching this comic book movie after a while, I think X-Men was the only one around at that time. And it was a lot of fun. And I enjoyed it a lot, too, because it was quite different to X-Men. And I was a big what I call Spider-Man cartoon fan as well. So yeah, it's a lot of what I call. Hadn't really any expectations because everybody I knew who had watched it had already gone, and I was
Mhm.
stuck in exams and everything like that. So it was all new to me at that time, and it was a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean that first film still holds up, and the trilogy as a whole. For some people, it'll still be their favorite trilogies, and it'll come out when we speak about it. But Spider-Man 2 was just phenomenal, and Spider-Man 3 has its problems. There's a lot more studio interference than Spider-Man 1 and 2 made bank. So Spider-Man 3, the studios were pressuring to get certain characters in there. Venom was one of them. That wasn't on Rammy's radar at the time. I know there was like a lot of talk about the Vulture supposed to be in there, like John Malkovich and all this kind of stuff. So it wasn't quite the movie that he wanted. And yeah, it didn't quite live up to what 1 and 2 did. And I think, Sacha's definitely spoken about it, and following No Way Home, spoilers, that, we could potentially finish that. Rammy's working with Marvel, he's directing Doctor Strange 2, and who's to say that he won't pick up that mantle and say, let me do my 4th Spider-Man movie and have Tobey Maguire with a carry on that story, carry on the continuity, and who goes, it's a multiverse at the end of the day. So but okay, so let's talk about, in terms of the Rammy trilogy, as much as I love the first Spider-Man movie and what it meant to me, Spider-Man 2 is not only the best of that trilogy, it's one of the best comic book movies ever made. It is just fantastic, and you can rewatch it so many times, and it's true to the comics, it's true to the characters. The characters develop from the first movie, they progress, they move on. And the difference with this trilogy is obviously Peter Parker goes from school to like an adult quite quickly in those 3 movies. It progresses his lineage quite quickly. But this movie, it was the villain, it was the fight scenes, like the train scene with Doc Ock and stuff like that, was just, at the time, it was like we hadn't seen anything kind of like this, and it was just so fast paced, amazing action, a lot of heart to it. Looking back at it now, I think I've mentioned in the last podcast, the only kind of weak thing in the movie for me is Kirsten Dunst and Mary Jane. I don't like her character in this movie. She goes from man to man. I mean, she was with Flash in the first movie, and then she kind of liked Peter, and then she's with Harry, and then she's with Peter, and then now she's with Joe Jameson's son. She's just all over the place with guys in these movies. But for me, that's the only weak link out of it. And looking back, but so Sacha, out of the Rammy trilogy, what's your favorite and why?
Spidey 2, man. Spidey 2. To be quite honest, it's probably my favorite movie. Just giving away number 1 right now. It's quite frankly, 1, it's pure to the OG, which I prefer anyway. Second of all, it's the movie that shows Spider-Man what is to be Spider-Man the most, kind of thing, in terms of how he deals with responsibility, how he's always the underdog, etc. You know what I mean? I mean, every other Spider-Man movie doesn't go to the depths that this one does. This is a proper character piece movie where it's Peter's point of view the whole way through, and they picked the greatest villain. Because here's the thing, I love the first movie. I really do. I really do like the first movie. It's up there, but the thing is, it's the problem I have with that original movie, and it's not that I hate the movie at all. I love it. I think it's a great Spider-Man movie. But you've got the origin story, which is fair enough. And with the origin story, there's certain things in the origin story you have to get right. He has to get bitten by the spider. He has to be in a wrestling ring. He has to, Uncle Ben has to die. He has to stop the robber. You know what I mean? You have these little key ingredients that have to happen. But then they pick the Green Goblin. Now, I love Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin, but back then we didn't have reoccurring villains like how we do now in comic book movies. Back then, it was kind of like when they made a comic book movie, this is the villain of the movie, and we're only doing it the one time. So
one and done.
One and done kind of thing. And this villain's probably going to die. Okay, but here's the thing: going into this movie, knowing it's the Green Goblin, I'm like, well, if he's going to die, he actually does die in the comics until like they brought him back again 23 years later. Another story. I'm not going to go into it. But point being is that if you're going to kill him off, motherfucker best get harpooned by that glider. Okay. All right. All right. Because if you waste him off like some other way, I'd be pissed. Oh wait, but it's a 12. He's not going to get harpooned by the glider. I was like, I begged to all the gods he got harpooned by the glider. Otherwise, I was like, no, they fucked it up. And then the other thing was Brooklyn Bridge. Fair enough. People don't have to die because obviously there's different iterations where he saves the girl, loses the girl, whatever. In the comics, it's Gwen Stacy rather than Mary Jane. But in the 80s cartoon, it's Mary Jane and not Gwen Stacy. In a cartoon, she lives. In other iterations, she lives. But the real iteration, motherfucker dies. Okay, so it's so there was certain it was like a checklist movie. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. And even though I enjoyed it and they did it, because it's a checklist movie, it's kind of like, okay, they got it right. But, whereas number 2 was like, when they say the better sequel, this was the better sequel. This was The Godfather Part 2. It was like, we're going to give you everything you loved about the first movie times 10. And not only that, we're going to pick a villain that he died in the comics like after the movie came out and stuff, but he hadn't died before then. And it was just kind of like, we can do anything we want with this movie. You know what I mean? We can do anything we want with this movie because we've got a villain that hasn't died yet, and just and he's one of the big bads, one of the big favorites. We can go nuts. We can go nuts with this character. And they went fucking nuts, man. They really did. And you know what? Like Alfred Molina fucking slam dunks that performance as Dr. Octopus. Yeah. And it's just everything I wanted from a Spider-Man movie. Like ever.
Yeah. And it wasn't about Spider-Man, beating the crap out of him. It was him helping him to redeem himself.
Exactly.
Exactly. And they delivered that brilliantly.
And the biggest issue that it deals with is how people deal with stress and stuff like that. And
stress, anxiety, and
anxiety,
absolutely. One thing I will say about the first movie. So when the first Spider-Man movie came out, it was rated 12. Working in the cinema at the time, that caused us huge problems because so many parents were bringing their kids to see it, and
8-year-olds to see it, and you couldn't see it.
Like 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds. It's Spider-Man, and so. But they're trying to take the kids in and you're like explaining, look, no, it's a 12, they can't go in. They're like, but it's Spider-Man, and it's like, I'm with them, I'm going to watch it with them. It's like, no, it doesn't matter, and you're asking these parents like, I need a passport, I need ID to prove this kid's 12, because we were at risk for fines and being shut down and stuff like that. It's it's a serious thing, like the guidelines of these movies and stuff. So we were under a huge amount of pressure. And that was the movie that actually started the 12A certification.
I was going to say, I thought it was that one.
So basically, because of the demand and because the studio realized, look, we can't change the movie rating because it's quite dramatic at the end. The fight scene's dark. There's a killing in it. We can't just do it. So they created the 12A, which is the 12 accompanied, which means, right, we'll let your kids in if they got an adult with them. And, that's when it shifted and the box office then took off because so many more people could see it. And again, it was one of those movies like, how are you going to sell toys for a 12 film to 6, 7, 8-year-olds, And so, but to be fair, the studio at first didn't back down. They had their 12 rating and they didn't edit it down to make it a PG. And they stuck with the movie and the content and they actually forced the classification board to create a new rating. So fair play to Sony for that. That's kind of groundbreaking.
Second comic book movie to do that. I think the '89 Batman was the first movie rated 12 in the UK as well.
Yes, it was.
Because that's why I couldn't get in.
I went with my dad.
My dad had tickets purchased, and we were walking up the stairs in the old Kenan in Harrow. And the manager goes, "He's not 12." And obviously, I was 8 at the time. As you know, I'm not the tallest guy, so I was even shorter as a kid. So I didn't get to see Batman.
My dad got me in. My dad's Turkish and does take no for no answer. And it was like, so we went to the cinema, and it was just like, because again, I was tall for my age, so I was lucky. But I also had my friend Jigar with me, who wasn't. He was tiny, and he's like at least a year younger than me. So we're rocking up there, and basically the guy's like, he's not 12. He's like, you calling me a liar? It's just like, he just pressured that manager into just be like, all right, just go in. He's just like, he wasn't going to argue with him because he's like this guy's going to have his way. So yeah, luckily we saw that at the cinema. That was thanks to my dad. So yeah, but okay, so Lee, out of the Rammy trilogy, which is your favorite?
Yeah, I'm going to go for number one. That's for me.
Ooh, number one, right? Okay, so why is that?
Just because it's the first one for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great movie. Like Sacha, I really enjoyed it. But yeah, just the feeling I got when that was the first live action Spider-Man, nothing compares to it really. And then when I saw it, I just come out there and I was just like, I was thrilled with it. And I was like, go back again. I mean, it's just one of those films. Just there's not many films I can say I've seen like 3 or 4 times at the cinema. And that was one of the first ones.
No, definitely. I think for me with the Rammy trilogy, the one thing that I kind of missed was Peter Parker making his own webs. You know, and I know they went through the organic route and stuff like that, but you know, the fact that you always had, you know, he's smart, you know, and he designed them, he builds them, he makes the fluid, and then it's about the cost of upholding that. You know, it's having to make the money for the web fluid. And you know, yes, he tries to make money in these movies for different things. You know, he's trying to help with his rent for himself and for his aunt, who's the house is closing down. But to have that responsible for the fighting, and maybe he doesn't have enough web fluid going into a fight or running out of it midway because he can't afford it, that could create a lot more in the film. Tom Holland just seems.
Origin as well. I do like an origin story.
And it was nice because you had the balance of him and Green Goblin both being created at the same time. So. Yeah,
that was really cool. It was, and seeing him learn his powers and everything like that. And Aunt May, you know, just like Satch said, it was it ticked boxes. You know, Aunt May was, you know, perfect. You know, everything was pretty much like
and Uncle Ben was really understated. He was such a nice guy, you know, and he just played it so well. So, all right, Alex, what's your favorite of the Rammy trilogy?
I think I've got to go with Spidey 2.
Okay.
It's just Doc Ock is just awesome. You know, the fact that the arms, you know, obviously back in the day with CG was in early stages, that the arms are mostly actually practical puppets. Just looks so good. I love the whole sort of Spider-Man No More kind of storyline as well, with like we're saying about the whole sort of anxiety and psychological side of it, him like losing his powers and literally sort of like jacking it in and being like, no, I'm only Peter Parker now, and then, you know, sort of like having to come back to the fight. And I like that Doc Ock is not your typical bad guy. You know, he's a good guy to start with. You know, the experiment goes wrong. It's the fact that, you know, the arms kind of sort of like take over, and he has that sort of redeeming quality at the end where he's kind of, you know, Peter sort of like, you know, says his own words back to him about intelligence and that kind of stuff. That sort of like pulls him back and makes the ultimate sacrifice to sort of put an end to his own mistakes. But it's just an awesome film. That second one, I think it's just
And it gets taken through a portal.
And he's excellent. And he's excellent in No Way Home as well.
He absolutely is, and it's like you said, I think it was such a great villain that they did with this movie and stuff like that. And to be honest, one of my favorite scenes in that movie is when Peter's getting ready to go to see MJ's play. He's getting ready. He opens his wardrobe. He's got his spider suit and he's got his suit to wear. And it's like, that sums up Peter Parker, you know, having to make the choice all the time. Am I being Spider-Man? Am I being, you know, this guy? And obviously he wears his suit underneath the other suit. So he takes both because he can't separate it. But ultimately Spider-Man always interferes and overrides because he has that sense of responsibility.
At the same time, that just goes to show how brilliant Rammy is as a director.
Yeah,
he's the best guy for the job. Still to this day, in my opinion, anyway. He really got it. You would never get that kind of visual choice in comic book movies now, because they're so studio driven or playing it safe. There was a lot of risk there. There's a lot of risk there in how stuff was portrayed, like the practical effects, like you know what I mean, like because like they could have CGI'd Doc Ock's arms back then. They could have
even like the classic sort of horror scene of it. You know, like when he's in the hospital.
Yeah,
and the arms just
and
go
that's
crazy. You
and
know,
that's
and
just
that's,
it. That's another thing. Rammy also adds more of his own directorial flair to it, because he is a horror movie director originally, with the Evil Dead trilogy, with Drag Me to Hell, and various other things. And with those movies, it was like, let's just give this guy a budget, the biggest budget he's ever had in his career, and let him go nuts. The guy went nuts. The guy even cast his family in those films. His brother playing Hoffman at the Bugle. You got his dad. You've got his uncle as Mr. Dickovich. You know what I mean? Like,
he's got his car in there.
Yeah, he put his car in there. Well, no. You know what? That car is in every single one of his movies.
Yeah,
every single one. It will be in Doctor. This ain't
It'll be
no
in Doctor
spoiler.
Strange.
It'll be in Doctor Strange. Trust.
Yeah, no doubt,
will.
no doubt. All right, so Sal, which is your favorite of the Rammy trilogy?
Well, I'm kind of leaning towards what Leah said. Is that I like the original because it was something not only new but something I like genuinely loved, because everything was new, and everything, all the feelings were new. The feeling of seeing everything for the first time, that sort of a thing. But for some reason, when I was young, I didn't really take to the Green Goblin that much. So it slightly irritated me. So the number 2 I enjoyed thoroughly because he wasn't there, but he was sort of. So I find it that I've liked the original, but I tie it to number 2. Like, to me, they're almost the same, like equal level of fun.
Yeah,
it's only because of I think when I was younger, I didn't really take well to Green Goblin. I found him irritating sometimes.
and I think Goblin, because the face and the mask didn't move.
Yeah,
the emotion's not there. It's you don't kind of get the same sense of conflict between the two. When you see Defoe in No Way Home, he's fantastic.
exactly.
And the maniacal look, the eyes, and the bits where he is like talking to himself in the mirror, this, that, and the other. It's like we wanted to see more of this guy in the actual suit, And I know they were looking at the rubber mask suit at one point, stuff like that. All you needed was him with like a cap or a helmet on and see his face. And he could have changed that movie.
The rubber mask.
No Way Home. When I was watching it, I was genuinely surprised. Like, I'm quite sure I hated this guy. I didn't really feel well to him, but I loved him in this. And I have to go back and look at a few clips and realize, no, I did find it irritating.
Yeah,
and I still do.
Yeah, that was the thing with Rammy. He wanted the rubber mask. He wanted that look, but the studio were like, we've given you the OG costume, because the costume wasn't supposed to be the classic costume. Remember, it was the days of X-Men and Blade and Batman. They wanted it to be like black and kind of like a 90s kind of like superhero kind of thing. And Rammy was like, no, it's got to be the OG costume. It has to be the Lycra or whatever. And the studio heads were against it. So he turned around and goes, okay, well, let's get a group of kids and let them decide. A group of 8-year-olds, let them decide. The studio head bought her own son, picked the OG suit. So it just goes to show, so they were just like, well, we let him win on the suit, but you got compromise there. We want the Power Ranger.
Yeah.
To
we
be
want
fair,
to be able to sell that toy.
Yeah.
But to be fair, the photos of that rubber mask suit are, it's freakishly good in terms of comic accuracy, but it is freaky looking. So you can imagine, as you were saying, Ken, with the whole sort of like 12 certificate thing, that's gonna, sort of 6 and 7-year-olds, that may be a bit too much. So I can understand why they went the route they did.
Yeah.
But as you say, you can see that Defoe in the latest one just proves that he did not need that mask. His face does. He does. He could do it with just his face.
Yeah, I mean that scene in No Way Home where Peter's punching him and he's just like smiling like manically. It's just like, oh my god, that's amazing.
But that's right. What Alexa said that about kids 60 or 70 are seeing that mask and not doing well. My nephew, he's 7, and he can't watch the first one. I put it on for 20 seconds. He ran away. No Way Home or any other Tom Holland movies, you can watch all of them.
Right, interesting. Okay.
I mean, he still gets a little scared every now and again.
Yeah.
Hides underneath the chair.
Yeah.
He pops out and comes out again. Whereas the other ones completely ignores them, just walks out, even though they're Spider-Man and he is an absolute Spider-Man fanatic.
Wow, interesting. Okay. All right. So obviously the studio then had a sort of like little bit of a wobble in terms of what they wanted to do next. They ended up doing a complete reboot instead of Spider-Man 4. They brought Andrew Garfield in to do Amazing Spider-Man, and it's. I remember at the time when it coming out, I didn't overly like it. I thought it was okay, but I had a lot of issues with it. So more issues than not. And for me, the main issue was the Peter Parker character. I didn't like Peter Parker in this movie. I didn't think, not that it was Andrew Garfield's fault, not in terms of his performance, but it's just the way the character was written. He was just too cool to be Peter Parker, skateboarding around with his hoodies, this that, and the other. He was too outspoken to start with, trying to break up the bullying. And he got cocky way too quickly, when he got his powers, and that bit in the gym with Flash and stuff like that. There's things I just really didn't like about it. In terms of comic accuracy, in terms of Spider-Man on the screen, I thought it was excellent. Some really good quips, good fighting. The swinging emotion is fantastic. Took it to another level. But yeah, it was just a really unbalanced movie. I rewatched it before No Way Home came out, and I enjoyed it more now, I think, than I did at the time. I'm a lot more forgiving in my old age, I think. But it's except when new stuff comes out and pisses me off, then I've got no tolerance. But I'm more forgiving for older stuff. And then Amazing Spider-Man 2. Actually, Amazing Spider-Man is actually very dark as a movie. It's very dark in tone. It's very dark in its lighting. And then Spider-Man 2 came out, and they tried to change it completely, make it really bright and flashy and all these colors, and then they've turned it really dark again at the end. Is just really unbalanced movies. Again, the villains weren't great. Electro, just they went too far with it, just making him ultra geeky Electro before he became Electro. And then his teeth getting fixed by electricity and all this crap. But the chemistry between Peter and Gwen in these movies are fantastic, and ultimately they had a relationship off of it, Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield and stuff. But just really couple of unbalanced movies, some really great aspects, some really disappointing aspects.
I thought the Amazing Spider-Man, when the first one came out, it actually was well received, and I think everyone was praising Mark Webb for what he did. That's from what I can remember.
It was one of those movies that kind of had split. So you either had people who liked it because it was fresh and something different, but other people just like it's not our Peter Parker. I think that was the main issue. I think for most people, it was the Peter Parker side of it, not necessarily the Spider-Man part of it. But there's a huge amount of focus on the parents and all that kind of stuff. It's like they tried to do too much with the origin story, tried to be too clever with it. But you had characters popping in and out that didn't make any difference. He goes to Oscorp because he wants to find stuff about his dad, and then he ends up following the sort of like the Asian guy who is working for Osborn, who you never see, and he's the one who rescues in the limo on the bridge, and then you never see him again. And every time he was following a plot point, he then got distracted and moved on to something else. So he was intent on finding the guy who killed his uncle. Then he gave up on that, and the storyline never went anywhere. He never found it.
I did like the web in the sewers. That was cool.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And there's some really cool bits to that. Looking for the vibration, absolutely, and the way he moved and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I said. The Spider-Man side of it was great, but so many story threads started, and then never went anywhere. And it was really frustrating from that point of view. So
yeah, I think it's probably because I don't know, because they had to because they rebooted, I think, so close to the original three. They tried to do, like you say, a sort of a different spin on it. And I'm pretty sure Ultimate Spider-Man had come out before those, so I think they were trying to take parts of that. But agreed, I thought the Spidey side of things was awesome. I'm sure there's a few. I mean, I haven't watched it in many, many years, but I'm sure there's a few sort of like McFarlane poses and stuff in the Spidey stuff. But yeah, again, I think it's just they made Peter a bit too, like you say, a bit too cool. And for me, in those films, it's the Peter Gwen stuff that is the heart and the core of those films.
Yeah,
for me.
Yeah, I mean, it did 262 million in the States. So don't get me wrong, it did some decent money. And then worldwide it did 758 million roughly. So it did some great box office because look, people like Spider-Man. They were going to go and see this movie. What kind of speaks volumes then is the Amazing Spider-Man 2 and the performance and how many people kind of went back to that. So in comparison for Amazing Spider-Man 2, in the States it did 202, so 60 million less, and it did 708 worldwide. So for a sequel you're always hoping for more money, and this did like 80 million less. But again, it comes down to budget as well. So the budgets of the movies were well over 200 million, and then you add an extra 100 million for marketing and stuff like that. So it's not that they perform really badly, but especially the second one just didn't get very good reception from a lot of people. So
I think Aunt May and Uncle Ben as well was also really good. I think
no, Uncle Ben was great.
That's a good point. That's a good point, actually. Yeah. Sally Field was awesome as Aunt May.
No, it was really solid casting. I think it was just let down by script and story. Sacha, you're not a fan of them, are you? So do you want to tell us your thoughts on the Amazing Spider-Man movies?
Yeah, before I get on that, Amazing Spider-Man 2, the reason why it was a bit of a flop was, well, another reason why financially, what they haven't released were the marketing figures. And the marketing figures was one of Sony's biggest spent marketing campaigns. They spent about as much on the marketing as they did the actual movie, and the movie was above 250 million, and they spent about the same on marketing. So that's an enormous amount for a movie. And if I remember correctly, that movie itself had 7 trailers. Most movies have 3. Okay, they'll have a teaser, they'll have the first trailer, and then just before release they'll have that 3rd trailer kind of thing, and then some movies will just have 2. But a big movie like Spider-Man, there's always 3. With Amazing Spider-Man 2, they had like 5 to 7 trailers, actual 2.5 minute long trailers before the movie even came out. And they were
you don't sell Spider-Man, do you really?
No, you'd think the name would do it alone. And with the first film, they actually filmed that on less of a budget than Spider-Man 3 because they knew it was kind of a gamble. So that made quite a lot. That made more profit wise. It made less than the Rammy films, but they were expecting a hit. That's why But with number 2, they went nuts. They were like, no, we're confident that we've got the audience and this will do it. Now, if you look at how much it brought in nothing shy of 750 million, which normally is a good amount of money for the average blockbuster. And at 250 million with an extra 100 million, that would have been fine. But and 250 million, no one's making that back end money. I mean, certain producers, certain heads are not making the back end money, and the minute they ain't making that back end money, I mean, it's not profitable, it's not viable. That's why they were kind of stuck to a wall to figure out, well, what did we do wrong? You know what I mean? Because they literally did what they wanted to do. All the studio heads, all the big producers that are over at Sony that own the IP, that was their movie. Those 2 movies were their movies. You know what I mean? They didn't know what they were doing wrong. You know what I mean? That's why you had the Sony leaks, which exposed that they really didn't know what they were doing. They were thinking of having Sam Rammy come back as a consultant or something, and all kinds of shit. And then you heard recently about Amazing Spider-Man 3. They brought in Kevin Feige and like, we just want your notes. What would you do to help us with Spider-Man 3? These are our ideas and stuff. And man just said, yeah, your ideas are waste. If I'm going to be a part of it, I want a complete reboot and I do it my way, whatever. And then she threw a donut at him or something.
She threw a sandwich or something.
She threw a sandwich or something at him. That's actually in the Marvel Studios book. And it was just like, and
that's canon.
That's canon. They even talked about it on the interview, kind of on the interviews and stuff. How
she was so pissed at him. She didn't know what to do.
Because you got to understand that was it was her decision with what happened with the Rammy trilogy, because
Mhm.
with Spider-Man 4, if they were going to do Spider-Man 4 and 5 back to back
Mhm.
with Tobey
Mhm.
Maguire. They were going to
Mhm.
film 2 movies back to back, and they wrote a script for Spider-Man 4, and which had the Vulture, and it wasn't quite ready yet. It wasn't quite there. Sam Raimi said he would need a bit longer, and they were
Mhm.
like, well, we want it out by this date. And Sam
Mhm.
Raimi was like, well, I don't want to make a shitty movie, and I don't want to go
He didn't
through
want
what
to
I went
compromise
through
after 3.
after
Yeah.
the third film. Yeah,
Mm.
not a thing. Oh, everyone's frozen.
Was it? No.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. After the third film, he didn't want to repeat. So, he was like, well, if I can't get what, I was originally promised, I'm just going to walk and not spend your money. And, we're going to have to do our thing, go make that reboot that that you really want to do anyway. And
Mhm.
why reboot it? 1, keep on to the rights, and 2, pay everybody less, because at this point, Tobey Maguire is worth more than Andrew Garfield. Do you know what I mean? So
Mhm. Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
it was time. It was time for fresh blood. But yeah, which one's my favorite out of these 2 movies? Oh boy, you know what? They're trash, both of them. I'm sorry, I hate them both equally. I like them both equally. When I
Mhm.
say that, there is stuff, even though I don't like these movies,
Mhm.
there's a couple of things I like about these movies. Like, I like their chemistry, but she's
Yeah.
not Gwen Stacy. Well, not the Gwen Stacy in the comics.
Mhm.
She
Mhm.
plays Gwen Stacy like if she's Mary Jane, but with a brain, kind of thing.
Mhm.
She
Mhm.
doesn't play her like Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy is the chick that was in Spider-Man 3, and she's nothing
Mhm.
like that chick. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Bright Dallas Howard, that's Gwen
Mhm.
Stacy. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, like to me, in terms of the way she played it, Emma Stone played Emma Stone. You know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
script
Yeah.
was written for a more cooler cat. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy is a different character altogether. So
Mhm.
that's one of my that's one of my problems. But you know what? They had chemistry, and that's what sizzled across the screen. But
Yeah. Totally.
when you watch it, couples, this ain't no Anakin and Padme shit where you're like, there's no chemistry.
Yeah.
Why am I watching this shit?
Yeah.
This is, they had it. They had the it factor.
Mhm.
So I'll give them that. The fights were very good. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? The fights
The
were
bridge
very good.
scene.
Yeah, Brooklyn Bridge. Okay, best thing about both movies, my favorite scene in all of those movies, Brooklyn Bridge scene when he goes rescues the child to put on the mask and
Yeah.
climb up the
Mhm.
flaming car. That's the best. That's the only thing in all of those 2 movies that actually felt like Spider-Man to me.
Mhm.
Everything else was
The
just like,
fight between Lizard and the school was very well done,
yeah,
because again, the fighting between them, because again, the way he moves and he kind of they made him move like a spider, and he was webbing him up and he's kind of
yeah,
crawling all over him and stuff like that. I just thought that was a really nice take.
yeah,
And there's different fighting styles as opposed to just punching all the time.
yeah,
It's very much about Spider-Man maneuvering out the way,
yeah,
getting out the way, very flexible and showing all that kind of style.
yeah,
So I did
exactly.
enjoy that.
But the
Standing in the
suit,
library. That
the
sort of
suit in
Oh,
Yeah.
Spider, yeah, the suit in Spider-Man 2, the actual
mhm.
costume, best Spider-Man suit in all of the movies.
Agreed.
That's
Agreed.
mainly because that's based on the Mark Bagley drawings from the Ultimate
Mhm.
Spider-Man comics, which is my favorite piece of, like, of
Mhm.
the way he looks and stuff.
Mhm.
And they got that suit down to a T, and much big improvement from the shite that was in the first movie, because that's the
Yeah.
worst Spider-Man suit ever.
Mhm.
And then what else did I like? Is there anything else I like?
Not usually.
No,
I'm gonna cut
that's
in.
about it.
I'm gonna
That's
cut
about
in.
it.
Right,
But
Sal,
yeah,
tell us about.
yeah,
Go on, Sash.
but yeah.
So,
I don't like either one of those movies. They're trash. I hate them both equally. I like them both equally. So in the bin.
All right, cool. Sash has made his statement.
yeah,
Sal,
yeah.
go on. Tell us about Amazing Spider-Man.
Well, I'm indifferent to both of them, really.
Mhm.
I was a little annoyed when they said, "Oh, we're coming out with a new one." It was like, it was just 4 years ago. You had the other one. You
Mhm.
can't redo something like you restart something just 4 years. I mean,
Mhm.
no, it's 5 years, but they made it. It came out 5 years after, so they must
Mhm.
have filmed it 4 years after, which is too damn close. Anyway, I did watch it, and I thought it was silly. It did feel like it was great graphics, great action, no story. and that's what I thought of both of them. Great action, great what I call CGI, but no story whatsoever. And I agree with you that the fact that Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, I mean, they had chemistry, and that I think that sold the movies really. I mean, I feel sorry for Michael. So no, sorry, not Michael. What's his name? Uh, oh, my brain just gone completely blank. The electro guy, blue guy, second part.
Max.
Jamie Foxx.
Jamie
Max.
Foxx. That's
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
Jamie
yeah.
Foxx, Max.
I mean, I generally feel bad for him. The guy was just blue throughout the whole movie. I mean, well, most of the movie, really. And that's why I liked in the recent one that he was actually there. So
It
I
was
mean,
it was Twilight for it was like the Twilight for Spider. Twilight was the thing, and they were going for the Twilight crowd,
We want
and it
sparkly.
worked. And it worked, to be honest, because
I've
like
never seen Twilight. I've no clue.
those Twilight chicks love that incarnation of Spider-Man.
Yeah,
It's true.
That's cool. Anyway, but I mean, for me, it was just that. I mean, it was good fun, but I don't think I cared about it that much.
Yeah.
Nor did I actually retain any information that was in the movie.
Yeah.
Generally, right now, when you guys are talking about it, I can't remember that happened.
Yeah.
Took an hour. Took an hour to become Spider-Man.
Yeah. the thing, also, there were lots of changes in that second movie. Obviously, trying to introduce villains. What they did with Osborn, killing off Norman and having Harry, is like, what are you doing? This is
There
just.
was a lot of stuff that was happening. The way they did
It was just like,
origin story was
we've never
weird.
spoken about Harry before. Oh no, we're best friends. Yeah. We just I mentioned him before. We used to be best friends, and now we're gonna have one conversation. We're best friends again. Everything felt so forced in that second movie because they didn't build the world properly. Harry should have been in the first one. And yeah, it just didn't do it. And they also cut Mary Jane out of the second one. So they filmed loads of stuff with Mary Jane. Mary Jane's in it for about a second in the movie because there's a scene right at the end when he's about to fight Rhino. There's a shot inside a calf, and you actually see the back of Mary Jane's head. And that's the only bit in it because they kept that in the movie. But they cut all that out, and it's just like they just didn't know what they were doing with this movie.
But that's what they knew what they were doing. What they were doing was they're trying to figure out what were the best scenes in the first three parts and take all those actions, improve them a little bit. Don't care about the story. We can just choose just change a little bit here and there and just mix it up together and see what happens. It's like the first that J.J. Abrams version of anything rebooted. Everything that everybody liked, shove them together. Here we go, have fun. And if it's done well, good. If it's not done well,
Soundtrack was alright.
Soundtrack was good. Actually, Sony soundtracks are usually good because they own most of music, really. You know what I mean? Because it's Warner Brothers and Sony that are the big companies when it comes to music.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean that was going to be their big push for Spider-Man. Sinister Six, obviously not a great reception. Didn't do the money that they wanted. Started to have a rethink, and then 4 years later, we get a trailer for Captain America: Civil War, and you get the shout out under ruse, and we get our new Spider-Man land in that trailer. And I've never, I don't know if I've reacted to a trailer like that compared to any other. That just blew my mind. And when he blinked with the eyes and they moved, oh my god, this is amazing! Oh my god! And yeah, we got a new
cartoon Spider-Man.
Yeah, and it was just a case of we got a new Spider-Man. He seemed and sounded like a kid. Then we find out it's like Tom Holland. He auditioned like literally a couple of weeks before filming. Really rushed in. He screen tested with Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans. Some big shoes, and he just nailed it. And that was our first introduction. We had a little bit of a backstory with him in Civil War, with Robert Downey Jr. kind of showing how he found him, and he was wearing his hooded costume with the goggles and stuff, and he gave him a suit. And then we got our movie, sort of like Homecoming, and I absolutely loved Spider-Man Homecoming. I thought it was really fresh. We didn't have to rehash the Spider-Man origin story. And the Vulture, Michael Keaton, just the scene with him and Michael Keaton in the car when he's driving him to prom. Oh, that's a chef's kiss. When he looks over his shoulder and the lights change and everything. It was just magic. And yeah, it was a Spider-Man I recognized from the comics, being in school and just being at that age and having Ned, it was great companionship there. And I just absolutely loved it. I thought it was great, and it was really, really refreshing. It didn't take anything away from the Tobey Maguire original movie. It was just different, and it was updated. It was new and fresh. So, and obviously, then he's appeared in Avengers movies and all sorts, but obviously he has his own trilogy now. So we got Far From Home with Mysterio. Again, just what they did with that character was fantastic. It made sense in the world that we live in, or what is set with the technology and the holograms and the drones, and the sequence where he's confusing him to try and get the information out of him, and he's starting going through Mysterio's world, and just amazingly done. And then we had No Way Home, and we'll talk about more about that, I'm sure. But it just a fantastic trilogy, and I can't say enough good things about it. It's so strong. Alex, what's your feelings on Tom Holland and the trilogy? And do you have a favorite of that trilogy?
I think favorite probably the latest, No Way Home, which I think is just Holland's best work in them. I think the reason, similar to yourself, the reason, as much as yes, the Sam Raimi ones were great, Tom Holland, he looks 15 in that first movie. It's just like it's I think he was maybe he may have been 18 or 19 at the time, but he looks, like you say, sounds and acts like he's 15, and that's what Spider is. All right, yes, in the cartoons that we grew up on, he's sort of like college, university age, sort of maybe early 20s or whatever. But to me, in the comics, it's particularly, and same as you, Sacha, the Ultimate Spider-Man stuff was just awesome. And in that, he's back to being a young sort of 15-year-old, and it just works, man. It's what Spidey's kind of always been. As you say, the Sam Raimi ones, he just kind of progressed to. I think actually in both previous incarnations, it was almost like, well, the first film was like, oh, okay, you're in high school, but it's actually like, well, you're graduating and you're sort of leaving high school. So he just sort of seems to just grow up a little bit too fast. Where I do like the fact that with Holland's Spidey, he's been a kid throughout. And I just think he's overall he's probably my favorite out of the three. I think he's got the right mix of great Peter Parker and great Spidey.
Yeah. Lee, what about yourself?
I enjoyed the trilogy. I think the best one, No Way Home. Though I did like Far From Home. That was good. I know we said about the Amazing Spider-Man 2 fight scenes. With Tom Holland, there has been some. To be fair, he's been in a lot more movies because he was in obviously Endgame and
Infinity War.
Exactly. So he's had
Captain America.
A lot more involvement. So, but I'd like to see him as a Spider-Man movie without any other, just like on his own, and having, like you say, with the Spider-Man 2, like you say, a train scene where he's we sort of had that in No Way Home with the bridge scene, and but I'm just trying to think of a scene where he's actually sort of gone at it with a villain and actually done some really cool stuff.
Really represented himself as Spider-Man. I know what you mean. So like in the first one, he fights Vulture kind of up in the sky on the plane. There's kind of on that beach area, and doesn't necessarily use his Spider-Man powers necessarily or fighting in the way that you'd expect. He gets thrown around by Mysterio a lot. There's a scene obviously where he's on the bridge and he's jumping through the drones to get to him, but I do know I get what you mean in terms of that one-on-one kind of fighting with the villain. We don't necessarily have so much of that from Holland. I do get that.
Say, there's been moments through that trilogy, and then like you say in No Way Home, the other two turn up and they kind of do their thing at the end. So it'd be nice to see him. Hopefully now he's got this new suit, and in the next one there might be an opportunity that you'll see some more spider skills coming out, and him getting really involved in that. So. Really, honestly, I think he is the best one so far. As a Spider-Man.
There's an argument that this Peter Parker has relied from Stark, in his suit and Ultra Kill mode and all the stuff that it can do. Hopefully now he's going back to basics, and that's kind of what I want to see now from this Tom Holland.
That's what I'm looking forward to the most. That's the one. I wouldn't even necessarily call it a dink, but yes, the fact that he's been almost like, you know, in the Avengers world since day one. So yeah, he's got the start. As much as, you know, again, you know, in Homecoming, the suit looks great. You know, the eyes actually moving is great, but we know that that's down to it being a Stark suit and not and not a sort of handmade.
Yeah, that's a good point
Spidey
actually.
suit.
So with his new suit, it'd be interesting to see if he has moving eyes or if it's fixed for his next incarnation, because we don't really get to see enough of that at the end of the movie. I can't remember seeing the facial or the mask move at all, because you don't get that much of a close up of it. But that'd be really interesting to see actually. And okay, so Sal, what about you and the Tom Holland trilogy? What are your thoughts?
I find it the best one, really. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
truth be told, when I watched the last incarnation here, the last movie, I did miss Tobey Maguire somehow.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I saw him, like, oh, I miss him at being Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
But I do really like Tom Holland movies, and I can watch them again and again. And
Yeah.
they seem to be improving. Am I right in saying that? I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys what I call agree with this, but usually it's you get the first one is a good one, the second one's decent, and the third one's usually crap.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the first one really good, second one actually quite good, and third one I find brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be improving, and I'm so eager to see what's going to happen next, because the way they've gone, and it seems like what you just guys talking about, that he's been so tech heavy, so tech reliant, that he would have to essentially go back to what we never saw.
Yeah.
They gave a hint to, and how that would look like, and that is very intriguing. Very
Yeah, he's got to
exciting.
figure out himself, right? Yeah, exactly.
And not only that, you can see Tom Holland improving as well. You can see the story writers picking here and there. I agree with the fact that he hasn't had one-on-one fight with anybody. He's always been a team in something, and they have the action has been quite different to the other movies when it comes to Spider-Man action, right? They haven't really relied on the basic Spider-Man, looping around the buildings and doing this and that. That was in the first one, the Homecoming, but not necessarily the next two. It's more been full-on physical fight sort of a thing. So maybe that would be around, because
we haven't seen him interact much with the environment around him when fighting. Which is kind of key of Spider-Man, and using his brain to kind of get. He does a little bit with like Doctor Strange. He's using math to beat him, and that's what we want to see more of. Him using his brain to kind of beat his villains and stuff like that. With Electro, in the comics, he makes a web which is kind of resistant to that, and he adapts his web depending on who he's fighting and all that kind of stuff. So it'd be great to see some more of that.
Well, you had that in the previous movies as well, but we didn't have this one because he already has all the electronic aids possible,
everything
including an AI in his head.
Yeah.
And now he won't be. That is really interesting. And I think that's the reason why we haven't had those sort of situations in his movies. But that said, I haven't really missed them until Lee just mentioned them. And I'm like, oh yeah. That hasn't happened yet.
I mean, I'm torn between Far From Home and No Way Home in terms of which is the better movie, because how much of the third one did I enjoy because it lent on Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. If they weren't part of this movie, how what would we be feeling about it? So I think for me, Far From Home did such a great movie as being an independent movie in itself, and having its own villain in him, struggling with the death of Stark, and finding another mentor that he needed to, wanted to rely on, and having that friendship and all that kind of stuff. But this one, very much was built on the foundations laid by the other movies. So I was struggling in terms of where I put it, but probably in terms of pure enjoyment, can't take away that I probably just enjoyed No Way Home more. What's the better movie? I don't know.
But that said, I mean,
No
even with Tobey Maguire and with Andrew Garfield in front of the screen and Tom Holland there, I still preferred Tom Holland. But I also enjoyed Tobey Maguire. But that said, I also enjoyed Defoe.
Brilliant. I enjoyed Garfield more in this than I did Maguire.
Yes,
because I think that because he changed his Peter Parker stance because he's older, maturer, gone through some other stuff, and he wasn't the weird Peter Parker we got in those other movies. He was different, and probably one of my favorite moments of the movie is when he rescues MJ and says, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yes." So that throwback when he couldn't catch Gwen, that really got to me. That was so, and it's just the way he embraced the others. He was like, "Oh, I've always wanted brothers. I love you guys." They kind of look at him a little weird. He just showed so much love and willingness to do whatever, to be a part of it. And I love the interaction between him and Maguire, where he's just like, he goes, your films were amazing. No, he's like, you're amazing, Spider-Man. And it was a real throw to say, look, it wasn't anything to do with you. We know you had some shitty movies, but that wasn't your fault. You're amazing. You are amazing. Just recognize that. He's like, yeah, I appreciate that. I need it.
I really wonder what the writers were thinking of this thing, how they wanted these particular four three Spider-Mans to interact with each other. I mean, they brought up stuff that we all know because of the movies. And
well, the key thing that made it work was, and this was why I was so pro this idea. Kevin Feige knows what the story is.
Yeah.
All right. And under other filmmakers and stuff, not even filmmakers, but producers, they tend to lose sight of what the story is, if that makes sense, and the character. At no point when Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire come in does it detract from Tom Holland being the lead.
Yeah,
correct.
Of the movie. All right. Because if this was like a different studio, that would have easily have happened. And that's why I was always pro this idea, because do you know why I was pro this idea? We got the MCU. Name an MCU movie where they've except for Black Widow, where they've detracted from the main character. You know what I mean? They've got a 23 film home run. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to go into Phase 4 because we know my feelings on Phase 4, but 23 film home run. Sure, there's some Thor: The Dark Worlds and some Iron Man 3s, but they're not dog shit movies. They're actually okay movies. You know what I mean? They're watchable. They're okay. Sure, they're the runt of the litters, but they're not dog shit. You know what I mean? And they always put character first. You know what I mean? That's down to Feige as a producer.
And Spider-Man sells, and now you've got 4 Spider-Men.
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. It's all about the money, and so with Sacha's, I think we've lost Sacha for a little bit. He's frozen, but Kevin Feige, he rules the roost. He concentrates on story. He concentrates on character. And that's first and foremost. So when I said, I admitted on the last podcast, I wasn't a fan of them bringing in the old guard, but the way they done it is because it served the story, and they weren't brought in too early in the movie. It was in the third act, but Tom still ran it. He was running them both. He was organizing. It was like, I've worked as part of a team. We got to do this. We got to do that, and it didn't take away from his storyline. And that was key. So plus, yes, of course, you could argue in No Way Home there's lots of different things where at the end it could have been, well, he could have just said, look, can you just make sure everyone forgets about Mysterio, but I suppose it shows the rash impulse of him asking for something, and Doctor Strange is just trying to help him. But it is a reset now, so everybody forgets who he is now. They did say everyone on Earth will forget who you are, so I'm thinking people who aren't on Earth still knows who Peter Parker and Spider-Man is. So I'm thinking that Nick Fury knows who he is because he's on the Skrull ship. Captain Marvel is off-world. Guardians and Thor, they're off-world. So I can only imagine his spell is affecting those people on Earth because that's how he did it. And we still have people who know who he is. And we'll see if that actually plays into it later or not. But I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Fury kind of plays into a little bit more. And I would love to see sort of like Spider-Man and Daredevil on screen together, and with the Kingpin and stuff like that. It all just depends on how closely they can knit all of that with Sony and that kind of side of it. But yeah, Sacha, sorry, you got disconnected there. We just kind of followed on your point in terms about Fergie brought it to life and stuff like that, and it's down to him that it made it work. And I put my hands up saying I was wrong. They did it right. They did it. They did it well.
One thing I wanted to add is that they weren't the 5-second do a one screenshot and bugger off sort of a thing for
it could have been the other way. It could have been on there for 2 minutes and go.
That's what I actually thought it was almost going to be. To be honest, I thought they were going to just pop in.
With great power comes great responsibility. Go do your thing.
So I thought they actually they integrated him into the story, like really well, and almost like going back to your point, Ken, about did you enjoy it more because of sort of like bringing those characters? I think if you took if you played out the story of No Way Home and just took Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire out of it and just had sort of like, Holland battling the baddies at the end on his own, I think the story would still kind of work. And you didn't necessarily need to have them in there. So I think the story and stuff you could still enjoy. But yeah, the way they introduced them worked for the story. It wasn't a quick sort of I'll jump in. Hey, I'm here. You've seen me now. I'm out. It worked really well.
Plus, it doesn't allow any loopholes left. That the villains came from those universes, but the Spider-Mans didn't. So that fills it up.
Yeah, there was some confusion in terms of like who knew what, because he said all these people die. It's like, well, Lizard didn't die, but you could argue that the Lizard side of him died because he gave him he released that formula at the end, so he was actually kind of cured at the end of that anyway. So in a sense, Lizard died. Electro, he saw himself kind of being blown up. But Sandman never died. We don't, he just kind of went off into the wind. So there's some inconsistencies there. And, is that everybody who knew Spider-Man was Peter Parker? They say that they were pulled. They may not have known it then. So like Electro, he didn't know Peter was there. But the argument is she calls out his name as he's kind of disintegrating. And so he might have picked it up from, the energy source and stuff around him.
It's one of those things where, those little nitpicks, I let it slide because I just enjoyed the movie so much.
Exactly. Don't make it too complicated. Go on, Lee.
The scale of this film, though, when you think about it, the scenes, the cost of the movie, the scenes aren't that big. Like at the end, you've got those three characters, but they're around the Statue of Liberty. When you think like Far From Home, they were traveling around the world and all that stuff. This is actually, when you think of the actual scenes, it was literally just the actors, the actual environments. So they weren't that big. You had the apartment where they spent a lot of time in the apartment.
Yeah, great.
Statue of Liberty. They're on the roof at the school, in the cafe. They're really small scenes. So the actual cost, you think, probably wasn't actually, obviously, the effects and everything.
It's because they had to pay salaries.
But how well everyone's like raving about this film. But it didn't have to go all over the,
You're right. It didn't have to get really big in scale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They done it so well for everybody to love this film, but the scenes were very localized.
Yeah, it's a good point. It didn't have to resort to like a light in the sky kind of thing at the end, that's a really good point, actually. Really good point. So right, let's move on to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That's kind of the last of these franchises we're going to deal with. This kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think I saw it at the cinema because I just thought it was like an animated movie and I just didn't get around to it at the time. I think I saw it when it came on Netflix and I was like, oh my God, this is freaking amazing. It was just, it's everything about it. The animation, the story, the music, the different incarnations of it, the voice acting. Because to be honest, I didn't know much about Miles Morales going into this because I kind of stopped reading the comics when he came, I never read the Miles Morales comic. The only kind of Miles Morales I knew is a little bit from like the Ultimate thing where kind of Peter dies and he's just kind of going to take over. And then the Ultimate series kind of finished. So I was quite new to that character and the way that movie dealt with it and kind of explained it, and I was blown away. And I know for a lot of people, it's probably their favorite Spider-Man movie. So, Sal, how did you feel about Into the Spider-Verse?
It blew my mind. Not only that, I mean, I wasn't expecting anything. I remember somebody said not somebody said. I actually saw a trailer when I think I was watching some movie. Saw a trailer before the movie started, and as soon as it came on, and I came on one of the streaming. I can't remember which one it came on. Anyway, watched it, loved it. Watched it again right after I finished it because there was some parts of it I thought it went too fast. Especially when he's falling down and there's a whole maze going on. I'm thinking, man, I gotta watch this again. And it was brilliant. The voice acting was brilliant. The music was brilliant. The soundtrack was brilliant, and the pace.
Yeah,
it didn't slow down. It had a beat, and it went pretty quickly. And also the fact that I had to think about any of the actors and what they were acting for animation, and the story was decent enough that it was good enough for adults and for kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex, Into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, similar to Sal, it's like I loved it. Spoiler alert, it's going to be my number one. Yeah, I obviously Miles Morales is very big in the comics now, I believe, because as he was similar to you, Ken, obviously, I think I read a few of the early ones, but that was just as I was starting to sort of phase out of buying my comics and stuff. So I knew the character a little bit. I just thought it was just done so well, you know, and it introduced the whole idea of the multiverse in a very straightforward, easy to understand way. I think the fact that each of the Spider-Men from different universes is different as well kind of helps that. So I suppose maybe if it was live action, maybe it'd be different. But obviously, being animation, I suppose if you had like all the Spider-Man look very similar, it would be a bit more confusing. So the fact that like each character from a different universe, you know, looks completely different, it just works, man. The story's great. It's got the emotional punches. I love it.
Okay. Lee?
Yeah, it was a great introduction to the multiverse. The characters were great. Yeah, it was really well done. Save the soundtrack, everything about it was really good. For me, I it's just personal opinion. I do prefer live actions more.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was really well done. It was great. I'm looking forward to the second one as well.
Yeah. Number 2, part 1. Sacha, Into the Spider-Verse.
Sacha can't hear us.
Oh, hey. Okay, so sorry about that. It kind of paused for a sec. So yeah, like Alex, you know, I kind of knew who Miles Morales was going into it. But like Alex as well, like it was coming to the end of like me actually buying like individual issues of like comics and stuff in general. And you know, I kind of got the gist of who he was. At first, I was like, you can't replace Spider-Man because Spider-Man's my favorite, man. And like the way they kill off Peter Parker in the Ultimate Universe, boy, that was harsh, man. I was just like, yeah, I'm done. I'm not reading it. And then I heard off the grapevine that no, stick with this Miles kid. He's actually kind of good. So I got the first couple of issues and off it, and I saw it. I saw what they were doing with it. They're trying to hype up that Prowler was like his uncle and shit, and I was just like, right, okay, fair enough. But like, I didn't follow it because he wasn't my Spider-Man. I was kind of done. So I was just like, cool. And then, you know, you hear all the nutty things that Sony are trying to do just to keep the IP. So, you know, so I was just like, this film was not on my radar at all. But the thing that made me watch it was Joe worked on this movie. He worked on all the promotional stuff. He worked on the trailers to this film, and everything. And Joe was like, Joe's not a big Spider-Man fan. Okay.
No.
Like he's not at all. He's just like, yeah, Spider-Man's just another superhero, whatever, you know what I mean? Not necessarily his favorite at all. And he turned around to me and goes, hey, this fucking Miles Morales film, I don't know what it is, but it looks fucking good. And I'm like, what? Really? I was like, all right. So, you know, when it came out, I must have caught it not opening weekend. It's a kids' movie and I was working and it was crazy busy. With kids' movies, I like to go like in the afternoon and I was still working cinema at the time. So I caught it before a shift. I watched it. I was just blown away. I was like, what the fuck? The animation was fresh. I liked the comic book feel. More importantly, it made me fall in love with Miles Morales. And I was just like, oh man, this is so cool. Like I really dig this. This is such a cool take on like, you know, that or on, you know, and the best thing about it wasn't like you had to know Spider-Man or anything. You could just jump in and watch this movie. Bam. You kind of get the gist. And yeah, sure, Peter dies in this, just like how he dies in fucking, well, not the same way, but you know what I mean? He dies. But the way they went about it, the way they dealt with it was great. And I like the alternate version of Peter that was trying to train up the kid. I was just like, man, why can't we get that guy live action? Come on, guys.
We had a different Doc Ock. We had this amazing Kingpin. You know, just so many good things about it. All right, so let's get on to the ranking because I think we could spend all night talking about Spider-Man. So a couple of honorable mentions. One is the 90s animated series. I grew up on that, loved it. It was a true sort of like from page to screen first thing for me. You know, I love the Peter Parker character. He was not just a kid, he was mature, and it had some, you know, real things about relationships and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I still love it today. You know, I will catch it on Disney Plus every now and then. And you know, yes, okay, it got maybe a little bit weaker towards the end, and unfortunately, it got pulled right at the end because of money and budgets and all this kind of stuff, and it never got to finish how it would have liked. I don't think the show gets enough credit when they talk about the movies and the multiverse and stuff like that, because it was the first thing to do the multiverse. You know, brought in all the different versions of Spider-Man and stuff like that. So it's John. Is it John Stampier?
Yeah,
who did that? You know, he's got his own page on Facebook where he actually gives loads of stories and history about his time on the show and what he did and what he's allowed to do, not allowed to do, and all this kind of stuff. And it was fantastic. You know, like one of the things is he went with Hydro Man because he couldn't use Sandman because that was going to be the James Cameron villain that were on his movie that didn't happen. So he talks about all these kind of different things on that Facebook page. So if you're not subscribed to that or a fan of that, go check it out. Really great. And then the second thing is Spider-Man game on the PS4. If you took all the cutscenes out of that, you know, you could make them one hell of a movie. The way they dealt with the characters, the way they dealt with the Doc Ock relationship and how that changed, all the other villains. It's just, you know, it's one of the best things that happened to Spider-Man ever. Just fantastic. And I can't wait for the second game to come out. I mean, Sacha played this game before I did, and he just kept saying, "Dude, you got to play this game. You got to play this game." He's like, "It's the best thing."
I'm not going to spoil it for people on the podcast here. Okay, who's played this game?
I haven't.
I'm not a gamer, mate. So no.
All right,
So
Alex. I'm going to tell you.
You...
I'm going to send you the YouTube. Just watch the video clips of the YouTube. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to say that. I'm going to say this. All right. If there was a game you'd play, it would be this game. This game is the best Spider-Man anything. Shits on all the films, shits on the comics, shits on everything. Okay, is what you want Spider-Man to be, like hands down. As an adaptation, here's the thing. This ain't a spoiler. The main villain is a villain I never heard of. He's like a guy from the comic books that the kids grow up with now, called Mr. Negative. And I'm just like, is it Mr. Negative?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it's like an Oriental guy in a white suit. Basically.
Yes, yeah. I was reading to Spidey when he was around. Yeah.
All right. I want Donnie Yen as Mr. Negative in a Spider-Man movie. All right.
Yeah.
If that was announced, I'll lose my mind. Okay, because he's a villain. And not only that, he's not like. What I loved about him was like he wasn't like the classic Doc Ock, Rhino, blah blah. He was his own fucking thing, and he was amazing. He was fucking amazing. And you know what? It don't even stop there, all right? Because they kind of reintroduced Doc Ock in a brand new way, kind of thing. Because the whole thing is him and Doc Ock are lab partners. They're actual partners. He's older. He is his mentor in science and life, kind of like a father figure, I guess. You know what I mean? But or best friend. They're best friends, and you know that now. You know that Doc Ock is like his best friend. You know that relationship is going to change forever.
The emotion in the game is
man, and when it does, you're bawling.
Yeah,
you are bawling, and not only I'm crying now. Not only are you bawling, the end of the game made me bawl my eyes out more than any of the films. And I was just like, guys, you got to play this game. If you like Spider-Man, you have to play this game. Watch the cutscenes. It's better than fucking all the movies. They get it so fucking right. Play that fucking PS4 game. Seriously.
Sacha, send the video out to our group, and actually we'll put it on a link on the podcast as well on YouTube. We'll put it in the comments. We'll put a link to like the video so you can see all the cutscenes if you never played the PS4 game. Just check that out. So right, I'm going to go around the room. You're going to give me your rankings of the Spider-Man movies. I'm going to work on a point system so we get an overall one. But I want everyone to have the opportunity to say which is their favorite and so forth. So basically, we'll start your bottom movie, which will get 1 point, and your top movie in first place will get 9 points. A bit like Eurovision. So let's do the Spider-Vision. Sal, we'll start with you. So, what is your bottom movie? What gets 1 point?
Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay, next.
Spider-Man 3.
Spider-Man 3 gets 2 points.
Amazing Spider-Man.
Amazing Spider-Man gets 3 points.
Here is I'm sort of stuck with Spider-Man Verse and Far Away from Home. Far from Home. Sort of tied together to me. But you can choose one of them before and below. I don't mind.
No, you got to tell me. So, so is it going to be Homecoming first?
No, let's do Into the Spider-Verse first.
Into the Spider-Verse. Okay, then.
Far From Home.
Then Far From Home. Yep.
Homecoming.
Homecoming.
No Way Home.
No Way Home.
Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man.
And Spider-Man. All right, nice. Not too much to argue about there. Lee, what's your rankings?
Okay, number 9, Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yep.
Spider-Man 3.
Yep.
Homecoming.
Homecoming, quite low. Okay.
Yeah. Into the Spider-Verse.
Yep.
Amazing Spider-Man.
Okay.
I like origin stories. Far from Home.
Yep.
No Way Home.
Okay.
Spider-Man 2.
Okay.
And Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. All right. Okay. Right. Alex, let's come to you now. That was actually quite similar to Sal, actually, when I'm looking at it. So, Alex, where are you starting at the bottom?
Okay, so at the bottom we've got Spider-Man 3.
Mm-hmm.
Followed by Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
And The Amazing Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Far From Home.
Okay.
Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man Homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man 2.
Yep.
No Way Home.
Yep.
And then Into the Spider-Verse at the top spot.
All right. Okay. Before I come to Sacha, I'm going to represent Neil. He was going to be on this podcast, and but he's has his rankings. So his bottom movie is Amazing Spider-Man 2, followed by Spider-Man 3. Then it's The Amazing Spider-Man. Then it's Homecoming. Then it's Far From Home. Then it's No Way Home. Then it's Spider-Man. Then it's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And then Spider-Man 2 takes top spot. Right, Sacha.
Okay. I want to put these both at joint place. I cannot decide. Is it Amazing 1 or Amazing 2?
Take your pick. I don't think it's gonna make. It's not gonna make much of a difference.
It's
It's not
hard.
gonna make
It's
any difference. To the
so
overall.
hard. It's so hard. I've switched. I flip flopped. I rewatched the films again. It's like, this is hard.
Maybe
But anyway,
go by the suit.
anyway.
Maybe go by the suit.
Anyway, you know what? Yeah, if I'm going by off the suit, then Amazing Spider-Man 1, because
Okay.
boy did I bitch about that on fucking Facebook and Twitter. And then Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Okay.
Okay. Then it's Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
Then it's Spider-Man Homecoming. And number 6.
Homecoming. Okay.
Okay. Followed by Spider-Man. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Okay.
No slight on the movie. It just plays like a checklist. That's all. All right. Now the good stuff. Into the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
Okay. No Way Home.
Okay.
Far From Home. I didn't say why I liked Far From Home better than No Way Home, by the way, but there is a reason. And like, Spider-Man 2. Come on, man.
Yeah. All right. So just tell us about Far From Home then. So what was it for you that is ranked at that high?
Okay, so I love No Way Home. I really do. I really do. And I was flip-flopping with these two. But the thing is, there are certain things in No Way. There's one thing in No Way Home that makes me go, but I enjoyed the movie for me to not bitch about it. I'm not going to go on about it in this podcast. I'm going to save that for another podcast sometime. But Far From, No Way Home, we kind of knew what to expect with the trailers. You know what I mean? Whereas we have not Electro, we have
Mysterio.
We have Mysterio. And what you've got to understand, Sony basically gave Marvel their two shittest villains, okay? Because when people heard Vulture was fucking the villain for the Spider-Man movie, people were like, what? He's like the worst villain ever in the comics. Like, no one wants that. But you know what? Kevin Feige, that great guy, he was just like, you know what? We're not going to be comic accurate with this guy. We are going to change him. Because this is the movies. This is what we do. And you know what? They cast the best actor for the role. They cast Michael Keaton, and I don't need to go in there, which hasn't been said already. Michael Keaton slam dunked it, and it was amazing. And then when you get to not Electro, Mysterio, my man in the trailers wearing the fucking suit, like just comic accurate, and I'm just like, get the fuck out of here, man. This ain't happening. How? I'm like, how is this happening? This is I've got Feige. I know you've got this 23 film streak, but this is bullshit. I want to know what you got up your sleeve. And you know what? Everyone's talking. Everyone build up to the film. Everyone's talking multiverse. They're like, yeah, he's a hero in the multiverse, and that multiverse. And I'm like, nah, he's a villain, man. There's no way.
We both called it out. He was.
And then here's the thing: I've reread, the origins of the damn fucking comic book, because I got the OG shit right here. I reread it, and like, it's Syndrome from Incredibles. He plays off as a hero, and then surprise, it's bullshit. It's the whole thing's a facade. He's just doing it to make himself look good and stuff, and whatever. So I was just like, yeah, I don't buy it. But you know what? We were coming off Avengers Endgame, and everyone's so into this multiverse thing, right? And people were like, no, it's multiverse. So I just remember the feeling of being in the theater for that movie. So I go watch this movie thinking, how are they going to fucking pull this off? And then I see Hydro Man, because I think the water thing is Hydro Man. So I'm just like, so you got Hydro Man in here, and all right, let me watch it. And then they're like, elementals. I'm like, what the fuck's an elemental? And then they're like, oh, it's from multiverse. I'm like, oh shit, maybe it is doing multiverse, but he's still a bad guy. Jake Gyllenhaal was so good. Not only did I not think he was a bad guy, I actually thought it was Peter Parker's friend. I was just like, wow, I bought in. Despite me walking in going, that's bullshit. The movie was so good, it brought me in against being the guy that usually knows the shit. I was just like, wow, God, okay, I guess he is a good guy. Maybe he is an Avenger. I don't know. And then they give him the fucking glasses, and then it all changes. And when it changes and throws in the Iron Man 3 shit that they'd been building up since then, I was just like, no, Civil War, that Civil War shit, which they were building up since then. I was just like, bravo fucking vo. You just fucking Kaiser Sojade shit in this fucking Spider-Man movie. Sure, it was. It blew my mind. It actually legit blew my mind. And not only did it blow my mind, it made all his fucking visions and special effect shit seem plausible. You know what I mean? For me, I was just like, oh my fucking God. That's some Now here's the thing: movie finishes and stuff, and it finishes and stuff, and what happens at the end? Forget the end credit scenes. Forget that. That doesn't happen yet. It ends. Oh, you're happy, and he's flying through the city. Okay, so I'm like, oh wow. So like, that was a really good movie. That was a damn good movie. How could you get better than this fucking movie? You can't. Oh wait, they had shit in store, because at the end, J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson comes,
Yeah.
and I lose my fucking mind.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
because let's face it, even on this podcast, we were like, who would we recast as J. Jonah Jameson? Who are your top 10 actors? And I was just like, well, you know what? I actually got a
J.K.
couple of
Simmons,
actors.
J.K. Simmons, J.K. Simmons, J.K.
Yeah.
Simmons, J.K. Simmons, J.K.
You know what? You know what? I didn't go J.K. Simmons, because I remember before Spider-Man 1 came out, who I would have cast, and it wasn't J.K. Simmons. What was brilliant about J.K. Simmons was that when he was cast, and I saw this bald guy from the movie The Gift, I was like, get the fuck out of here with that guy. I can't see him as fucking J. Jonah Jameson. I ain't gonna say who I wanted, because now if I say it, it sounds fucking ridiculous. But but because it is, and it was an A-lister as well. Actually, I know, fuck it, I'll say it. It was either Tom Hanks or Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro from the what was it, Cuba Gooding Jr. film where they go underwater and shit with the marine.
Oh, man
Man
of
of
Honor.
But yeah, that film because of his accent, and the guy's old and shit. And I figured he's like one of the greatest actors ever. He could probably pull it off. And then the other person was Tom Hanks, because Tom Hanks with the tash, he could kind of pull it off. And you know, Tom Hanks isn't likable. Well, he's just got to act and make himself unlikable. I'm pretty sure it's a comedy role, so he'll probably leap at the chance of doing that. So those are my two picks for J. Jonah Jameson. So this JK guy, whatever, AK guy, whatever, yeah. And then I see the fucking movie, and I'm just like, wow, fuck Tom Hanks and fuck the other guy, De Niro, fuck them. This guy. So you know, yeah, I was thinking them for the MCU, but deep down in my bones, and you know what I'm like, I don't like change. It was always going to be J.K. Simmons, and when he showed up, I was just like, oh, thank God. Oh my God! It was the cherry on top to a 10 out of 10 movie.
Yeah, and they wanted to give him a different look, and he actually fought for the tash.
And that makes me like him even more.
Yeah, so so basically they wanted to change his look, and he was going to be bald and have no tash, but he was just like he allowed the baldness in a sense, but he's like he fought for that tash, and I was like, what were they thinking that they weren't going to include that? Do you know what I mean? It was like,
you know what they should do. You know what they should do
in that conversation.
No, that's Sony shit, man. You know what they should do? They should, in the next film, they should do a Lex Luthor. They should just fucking have loads of wigs,
put a wig on,
have them fly off.
For real. All right, so I'll give my rankings. So in last spot, I actually have Spider-Man 3. There's just so many things I just don't like about that movie, and I just can't forgive some of that dancing and bits and pieces in it. Then I went with Amazing Spider-Man 2, followed by Amazing Spider-Man, then Homecoming, then Into the Spider-Verse, then Spider-Man, then Far From Home, because again, I love that movie, then Spider-Man 2, and I actually finished with No Way Home on top. I know this is going to be the movie I'm going to rewatch the most out of all the Spider-Man movies. And it's kind of that rewatchability for me. I watched it twice at the cinema, and I'm seeing all these screen grabs on TikTok of people filming this and the other. I'm just like, I keep loving it, and I keep stopping and watching it. And again, I think Tom Holland is my favorite Spider-Man, just because what he's brought to the role, and just an amazing send-off, and the way they brought the villains back, Defoe, you know, and Octavius in this, it just works so well. And yeah, okay, there's a couple of bits and pieces that, you know, I probably would have changed, but you do that with every movie. So, but for me at the moment, yeah, it's kind of sitting there proud at the top of my list. But take nothing away from like Spider-Man 2 or some of these top movies are just amazing. So saying that, let's go. So I've allocated points to all of them. So this is our creative control ranking of the Spider-Man movies. In last place, we have Amazing Spider-Man 2, followed by Spider-Man 3, followed by The Amazing Spider-Man. Then we have Spider-Man Homecoming. Then we have Spider-Man Far From Home. Then we have Into the Spider-Verse, followed by Spider-Man. In second place is No Way Home. And in top spot is Spider-Man 2. That's a fair representation.
Yeah.
You know, those middle movies kind of get a little bit muddled, but you know, Spider-Man 2 went to top, second, third. You know, it's recognized by everyone as like one of the best. And yeah, it deserves its top spot. I ain't got no qualms about that at all. So yeah, so that's our ranking of the Spider-Man movies. You guys content? You're okay with that?
It's funny how everybody said like Tom Holland's their favorite Spider-Man, but Homecoming is way down the list.
That's
yeah, it is. And also the fact that Spider-Man 2 is up there, and I just think
number 4 for me.
Yeah. I think just Spider-Man 2 is just like the accumulation of everything. Everything just came together. The Spider-Man character, the Peter Parker character, Dr. Octopus, having Connors in there as his, lecturer, and his battle with himself and his anxiety, no Spider-Man No More storyline, J. Jonah Jameson, and him having him at the party with MJ. Just everything was just coming together in that movie. I think the only kind of cheesy thing when I think back of it is that kind of Mary Jane running in the wedding dress thing at the end. It's like, probably could have done without that, but overall, an amazing movie. So that's our ranking. So,
Scene, isn't it?
What's that?
Is it the graduate scene? It's a bit like that.
Yeah. So that's it. That's our ranking of the Spider-Man movies. Thank you very much for joining me, gentlemen. Much appreciated for your time. Some great debates and thoughts and opinions. But we're pretty much all on a very similar level there. So look, you listening, everyone listening to the podcast, let us know what your favorite and your worst movies are. Sound off in the comments. Tell us how right we are. Tell us how wrong we are. Did we, have we got it completely wrong, or are we in line with what you're thinking? Please make sure that you are liking and subscribing to us on as many platforms as you can. Help us spread and grow. We had some stats actually come through for year end, which I was really proud of. So in 2021, I'm just bringing it now. We published 34 episodes, 2,156 minutes of 57 minutes of content with over 1,059 downloads. So that's not taking into our YouTube videos or anything like that. It's purely podcast downloads. So thank you very much. We really appreciate your support. Keep downloading, keep sharing, keep reviewing us. Allow us to, or at least me, make this my full-time job. I'd appreciate it. That's what I got to say. So check us out on all the major podcast platforms. Definitely check us out on Spotify and Good Pods, and make sure you are ranking us and reviewing us on those. And like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you get some additional content with our trailer reactions. But yeah, thank you very much, gentlemen. Anything you guys want to share? Anything you guys want to pimp out while we're here?
I'm good.
Not really.
Everyone's good. All right, cool. Right, that's it. Thank you very much, and until next time, peace out.